Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Sophie never expected a simple ride to feel so dangerous. Her husband's best friend, Daniel, had asked for a lift home after a late-night gathering. What began as polite conversation in the dim glow of streetlights turned into something unspoken but undeniable. By the time they pulled into his driveway, a line had been crossed, and yet Daniel remained in the passenger seat, his presence heavy with the weight of what they'd just done. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. The rain had stopped, yet the streets still shimmered, reflecting the golden glow of the city lights like scattered jewels on black stone. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp pavement and the distant hum of traffic. Richard Henry pushed open the door to a small, cozy cafe, a place he would normally pass without a second glance. He usually preferred polished, high-end venues, the kind that mirrored the corporate world he ruled. But today had been long and exhausting, filled with back-to-back meetings that left his mind clouded and his patience thin. For once, he craved a moment away from sharp suits, marble floors, and hushed boardroom voices. The cafe greeted him with the warm, rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans, mixed with the faint sweetness of baked pastries. The mismatched chairs, worn wooden tables, and soft yellow lights gave the space an inviting charm. A handful of customers sat scattered across the room, each lost in their own world. Andrew, though that wasn't the name he was known for in boardrooms, walked toward the counter, phone already in hand. He intended to check his emails while waiting for his coffee, but then something broke through the quiet hum of the cafe, a faint, soft sniffle. At first he ignored it. Cities were full of noises, hurried footsteps, conversations overlapping, the distant honk of a horn. But this sound was different, subtle, almost hidden, as if the source didn't want to be noticed. He turned his head slightly. In the far corner, partly in shadow, stood a small boy, no more than 4 years old. His tousled blonde hair fell messily over a pale face, and his striking blue eyes that seemed oddly familiar glimmered with unshed tears. The boy clutched the edge of a wooden table, his little hands tight, as though holding on would keep him from drifting away. His lower lip trembled, but he was clearly trying to hold back the tears. Andrew's brows drew together. There was no adult nearby, no guardian keeping watch. This wasn't right. Sliding his phone into his pocket, he walked over slowly, careful not to startle the child. He wasn't naturally drawn to children, didn't dislike them, but they had never been part of his life. His world was built on structure, strategy, and precision. This situation was none of those things. He knelt down to the boy's level. "Hello, my friend," he said softly. "Are you all right?" The boy flinched slightly, eyes widening as he looked up at him. He hesitated, his small fingers gripping the table even tighter. "Are you here with someone?" Andrew asked gently. The child's voice was barely above a whisper. "My mother." His lip trembled, and then a single tear slid down his cheek. I can't find her." Something tightened in Andrew's chest. This wasn't the casual worry of a child whose parent had momentarily stepped away. This was fear. "What's your name?" Andrew asked. "Olivier," the boy murmured, rubbing at his eyes with the cuff of his sleeve. Andrew gave a small nod. "That's a fine name. Now, Olivier, can you remember where you last saw your mum?" "She was working," the boy said quickly. "She told me to stay in the back, but I got bored, and then I couldn't find her." His voice wavered, guilt edging his words. "That confirmed it. She must be an employee here." Andrew stood, resting a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. Approaching the counter, he addressed the barista. "Excuse me. This young man seems lost. He says his mother works here. Can you help us find her?" The barista's eyes softened in recognition. "That's Lily's boy." Turning toward back, she called out, "Lily, hurry." Footsteps echoed from behind the swinging door, and then a woman appeared, moving fast, her face drawn tight with worry. Her eyes swept the room until they landed on Olivier. Relief washed over her features as she rushed forward and dropped to her knees, pulling him into her arms. "You scared me, darling," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "I told you to stay in the back." "I'm sorry, mother," Olivier sniffled, clutching her tightly. But then, as she glanced up, her gaze locked on Andrew and her breath caught. His expression mirrored hers. For a moment, the world seemed to still. Lillian Brooks, the woman who had vanished from his life years ago. The woman who had once meant everything to him, and now she held a little boy with his eyes. Andrew's voice was low, but each word carried weight. "Does he belong to me?" Lillian hesitated. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways, always telling herself she would be ready. But now, faced with him and the truth, her voice came out in barely more than a whisper. "Yes." The air between them grew heavy. Andrew's jaw tightened, his breath deepening as he absorbed the truth. His next words were quiet, almost too quiet. "You never told me." She flinched at the old name he used, Lily. "You were consumed with your work," she said softly. "Your company, your legacy. We were already falling apart. I thought if I told you, you'd offer money, but nothing more. I believed," she faltered. "I believed it was best for him." Andrew gave a short, humorless laugh. "Best for him? You thought keeping my own son from me was the right choice?" She dropped her gaze. Silence pressed in until he spoke again, his tone steady but laced with something deeper. "I want to know him." Her head snapped up. "What?" "I said I want to know him," Andrew repeated. "I've lost 4 years. I won't lose any more." Fear flickered across her face, but beneath it was something else. She had taken his choice once. She couldn't do it again. At last, she exhaled. "Understood." Lillian adjusted her posture, clearing her throat as she settled into her chair. "We were simply enjoying our breakfast. I was uncertain about the time of your arrival. I had no intention of arriving late." Andrew cast a quick look at Olivia's plate before shifting his gaze to the additional one resting nearby. "Have you placed the order for Lillian?" Paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. I wasn't certain if you would assign anything." Olivier, on the other hand, appeared to possess unwavering confidence. "Feel free to take some of mine," he said, nudging his plate a bit closer. "Mother says that sharing is beneficial." Andrew's lips curled slightly, a hint of humor breaking the seriousness of the moment. "She is correct." He lifted a fork and took a delicate bite, disregarding Lillian's gaze, which seemed to dissect his every action. The pancake had a hint of chill, yet he hardly paid it any mind. Olivier smiled broadly. "Do you enjoy pancakes?" Andrew gave a slight nod. "Indeed, it's been some time since I last enjoyed them." The young lad inhaled sharply. "What's the reason behind that?" Andrew paused, aware that he lacked a response that wouldn't come off as absurd at this moment. "It seems I've been quite occupied." Olivier scowled, overwhelmed with tasks. "Pancakes will have to wait." Andrew cast a sidelong glance at Lilian, who seemed absorbed in her coffee, avoiding any engagement. He cast a glance back at Olivier. Overwhelmed with numerous commitments, the words lingered in the air for a brief moment, yet Olivier chosen not to linger on them. He returned to his meal, appearing satisfied that his pancakes were now being enjoyed. Beatrice Lillian at last found her voice. "I'm unsure about your intentions in the situation." Andrew, he locked eyes with her. "I desire moments with my son." She let out a breath. "It's more complex than that it is to me," he stated with conviction. "I wish to avoid causing any upheaval in his life. I wish to avoid any confusion for him. However, I refuse to turn my back." Lillian gazed at him for an extended moment, as though assessing his words, searching for any flaws within them. At last, she let out a deep breath. "Let's take our time to ease into this brief encounter's moments. Shari won't push him into anything he's not prepared for." Andrew gave a slight nod. "That seems reasonable." Olivier glanced back and forth between them, then tilted his head thoughtfully. "Does this imply that you'll be present more often?" Andrew felt a constriction in his throat. "Indeed, young one, indeed it does." The boy pondered this for a moment, then a smile spread across his face and durst. In an instant, the atmosphere in the room transformed. It hadn't vanished entirely, but it felt more subdued, simpler. Lillian appeared uncertain and grappling with her decision, yet Andrew noticed a subtle glimmer of hope beginning to shine in her eyes, as Olivier excitedly shared his thoughts on his favorite cartoons and expressed his desire to learn how to ride a bike. Andrew had a moment of realization. This was not going to be a simple task. For the first time in his life, he felt a deep yearning to strive for something beyond mere success. Andrew had always been decisive in the realm of business, in the art of decision-making. In every facet of his existence he had consistently exuded confidence, yet as he stood before Lillian's apartment door, an unfamiliar sensation washed over him. Uncertainty. A week had passed since their breakfast at the cafe, a week since Olivier had gazed up at him with those striking blue eyes and inquired if he intended to stay. Andrew fulfilled his commitment, showing up each day and gradually integrating into his son's life. Brief strolls to the park, leisurely afternoons at the cafe where Lillian was employed, and extended discussions about dinosaurs and superheroes. It was unfamiliar, peculiar and daunting in ways he had not anticipated, yet it also seemed an had exercised caution. She remained nearby, never fully abandoning them, always within hearing distance, always observing. He grasped the concept. She was still contemplating whether she could place her trust in him, and if he would indeed keep his Indeed he was as well. Today felt unique. Today marked the first occasion when Lillian welcomed him into their home. Andrew rapped twice, adjusting his stance as he lingered in anticipation. The door creaked open moments later, revealing Lillian, her brown eyes meticulously examining his face as if she were weighing the merits of this encounter. She silently moved aside, granting him entry. The apartment, though compact, exuded a cozy warmth. Sunlight poured through the windows, enveloping the humble furnishings in a warm golden glow. Several children's books lay haphazardly on the couch, while toy cars were arranged with meticulous order on the coffee table, suggesting that Olivier had arranged them with thoughtful care. It was a stark contrast to Andrew's familiar surroundings. His realm was polished, contemporary, crafted with intention. This space exuded a sense of warmth, resembling a home in a manner his penthouse never could. From the hallway, Olivier's voice echoed, vibrant and brimming with enthusiasm. "Mummy, is he here yet?" Lillian hardly had a moment to respond when Olivier burst into the living room, a broad smile lighting up his face. His golden locks clung to his forehead, still glistening from a recent bath, while he donned pajamas adorned with whimsically little rocket ships. He came to a sudden halt in front of Andrew, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "You came," he said, as if he had been holding on to the hope that Andrew might consider. Andrew lowered himself, aligning his gaze with the other mentioned. "I would do that." Olivier's smile grew brighter, and in a spontaneous gesture he took hold of Andrew's hand and pulled him toward the couch. "Take a look at my creation." Andrew allowed himself to be drawn along, taken aback by the ease with which it unfolded. He settled into his seat as Olivier ascended next to him. Beaming, Ash gestured toward a vibrant assortment of blocks meticulously arranged on the coffee table. "It's a space station," Olivier elaborated, his tone brimming with enthusiasm for those who traverse the cosmos and the beings that inhabit it. Andrew examined it with the gravity it warranted. "It appears quite remarkable. I believe there's potential for additional astronauts." Olivier nodded with enthusiasm. "Indeed, we have the potential to create even more." Andrew grasped a handful of blocks, allowing the boy to guide their collaborative effort. Time seemed to blur, and eventually, Lillian took a seat opposite them, observing in silence. "You're quite adept with him," she remarked after a moment, her tone gentle. Athon. It had been. Andrew cast a fleeting look in her direction. "I am making Ainford." She let out a breath, curling her legs beneath her on the couch. "He's still navigating through all of this. I feel the same way." Andrew meticulous liposen, a small block atop their expanding creation. "I understand, however, I have no intention of leaving." "Lillian," she observed him blatantly, as though weighing the truth of her conviction. Olivia, unaware of the gravity of their discussion, looked at Andrew with wide eyes. "Shall we visit the park tomorrow?" Andrew acted without a moment's pause. "Certainly." Lillian let out a soft sigh, yet a faint smile danced on her lips. "Looks like I'll be enjoying a Liz aloof turn break." Andrew locked eyes with her. "Alternatively, I could handle it on my own." Her expression changed in an instant, becoming cautious once more. "It's premature for that." Andrew chose not to engage in a dispute. He decided not to exert any pressure. "Then we all go," he stated plainly. Lillian eased a bit, as though comforted by the agreement. Olivier, however, had already progressed, lifting his space station and placing it meticulously on the table as if it were the most significant object in existence. Andrew found himself on an uncertain path, yet for the first time he was free from the weight of future considerations. He was neither plotting nor anticipating their future. At last he was just present, and it seemed just as it should. Beatty following afternoon, Andrew found himself in an unexpected scenario, standing in a park, clutching a juice box and observing a 4-year-old darting around him with endless enthusiasm. He had navigated intense negotiations, fierce boardroom confrontations, and multi-million-dollar mergers, yet nothing could have equipped him for the challenge of keeping pace with a child who appeared to have endless energy. Olivier dashed across the playground, his joyous laughter echoing as he scaled the jungle gym with remarkable agility. His tiny hands clutched the bars firmly as he ascended. Then he turned to wave at Andrew with a sense of pride. "Behold my elevation." Andrew nodded, squinting against the bright afternoon sun. "That's quite remarkable." Lillian, positioned a short distance away, emitted a gentle chuckle. "Ascends every surface. It seems as though he is completely unafraid." And Andrew looked at her, picking up on the affectionate frustration in her tone. Today, she wore a casual outfit, her hair pulled back, exuding a sense of relaxation that was noticeably different from their earlier encounters. It was the first time he had encountered her beyond the confines of work, beyond the cafe, in an atmosphere that felt ordinary. "He inherited that from you," he remarked, observing as Olivier meticulously started his descent. Lillian raised an eyebrow. "Do you really believe that?" Andrew wore a sly grin. "You always faced challenges head-on." She let out a breath, her gaze drifting elsewhere. "That feels like ages ago." Andrew understood her implication. Their history was intricate once they were utterly inseparable, and had held the belief that she would forever remain at his side. Yet at some point in the journey, Ambition seized control, priorities realigned, and she departed, leaving no trace narrational up to this point. Olivier dashed back toward them, his cheeks aglow from the warmth, a broad smile lighting up his face. I wish to take a ride on their swings. Andrew pointed to the vacant swings in the vicinity. Let in proceed. Olivier took his hand firmly, and Andrew was surprised by the warmth that blossomed in his chest from such a straightforward, trusting action. He trailed the boy to the swings, hoisting him onto the seat before positioning himself behind him. Are you prepared? Responded with enthusiasm. Lift me up. Andrew let out a soft laugh, not excessively elevated. Your mother may have some strong feelings about this. Lillian let out a derisive snort from behind them. That is indeed correct. Andrew propelled Olivier with a decisive shove. Observing boy saw ahead, his joyous laughter echoing around them. He pressed on, settling into a cadence, absorbing Olivier's musings about his beloved cartoons, his preferred treats, and the new sneakers he desired for their promise of speed. It felt peculiar, though their acquaintance was brief. Every moment spent with the boy felt instinctive, as if their connection had been destined from the very beginning. Eventually, Olivier eased his pace, shuffling his feet through the sand. Bring the swing to a halt. He glanced at Andrew, curiosity etched across his foes. Greetings, sir. Andrew wore a sly grin, still referring to me as Miss Ario. Olivier inclined his head. How would you like me to address you? Andrew paused, casting a fleeting look at Lillian. She observed them intently yet remained insolent. He cast a glance at Olivier, maintaining a calm tone. Feel free to refer to me however you like, my friend. Olivier appeared to ponder it for an extended moment, with a subtle, assured nod. He flashed a grin. All right. Andrew, something within him contorted in an unforeseen manner. It wasn't a matter of rejection. He simply hadn't anticipated that Olivier would instantly refer to him as Dad. He still had to prove himself for that, yet when his son spoke his name so effortlessly and with such ease, it felt like a significant moment, a modest yet significant stride. Andrew beamed. Absolutely, my friend. Olivier leaped from the swing and grasped his hand. I would like to have some ice cream. Is it possible for us to do that? Andrew cast a fleeting look at Lillian, his eyes silently seeking her consent. She let out a sigh, yet a smile graced her lips. Understood. However, no chocolate. It ends up all over the place. Olivier let out a deep, frustrated sigh. Mother. Andrew chuckled, playfully tolling the boy's hair. How about we grab some ice cream, my little friend? As they strolled away from the swings, Olivier's tiny hand still clasped in his. Andrew came to a realization. For years he had been convinced that success was defined by figures, by influence, by the next significant achievement. Yet this moment, this bond, this deepening trust seemed to hold greater significance than anything else. For the first time in his life, he found himself free from the burden of contemplating what lay ahead. He was just present. He felt an unwavering desire to remain exactly where he was. The sun was beginning its descent as they arrived at the quaint ice cream shop nestled at the street's corner. Olivier pulled on Andrew's hand, nearly bursting with enthusiasm as he glanced at the vibrant menu showcased on the glass counter. His blue eyes sparkled with excitement as he enthusiastically gestured towards the flavors, his enthusiasm seemingly boundless. I want vanilla. Olivier declared, his face pressed against the glass, adorned with vibrant rainbow sprinkles. Andrew Smurf, casting a sidelong glance at Lillian, who responded with an amused shake of her head and a soft sigh. You always choose vanilla, she playfully remarked. Olivier faced her, his eyes widening in exaggerated disbelief. It's simply the finest. Andrew let out a soft laugh as he approached the counter. Vanilla, adorned with a cascade of rainbow sprinkle sundust. He cast a fleeting look at Lillian. What about you? She paused, her arms gently folding across her chest. I'm doing well. Andrew arched an eyebrow. So ice cream isn't your thing? Lillian let out an exasperated sigh. Certainly, I simply, Mommy has a fondness for strawberries. Olivier interjected with a sly smile, yet she never acquires it for her own sake. Andrew fixed her with a pointed gaze, anticipating a rebuttal, yet she merely sighed, casting a glance at her son before muttering, fine light for strawberry. Shortly thereafter, they found themselves seated at a small metal table at doors, the evening air refreshing yet enjoyable. Olivier was completely absorbed in his ice cream, joyfully savoring the melting swirls while his feet swung playfully beneath the chair. Andrew observed him for a brief moment before shifting his attention to Lillian. It seems you weren't going to receive anything at all. She nonchalantly shrugged, savoring a delicate bite of Harris cream. I typically don't give it much thought. It's really nothing to worry about. Andrew's brow furrowed ever so slightly. If it's something you enjoy, then it is. Lillian's expression shifted, revealing a moment of surprise at Dunnick's words. She gazed into her cup for a moment, then slowly shook her head. It seems I've become accustomed to prioritizing him. Andrew cast a sidelong look at Olivier, who was meticulously arranging sprinkles on his spoon, savoring each one as he consumed them, and individually he acknowledged it softly. However, it doesn't imply that you weren't worthy of having things for yourself as well. Lillian gazed at him, a mystery lingering in her expression. He noticed the uncertainty, the long history of solitude, the subtle resilience that had propelled her forward. He understood that she acted in what she believed to be the best interest, even if he could never concur with her decision to keep Olivier away from him. "Why did you really leave?" he asked after a pause, maintaining a calm tone. "The truth is what I seek." Lillian took a deep breath, her grip on the spoon growing firmer. "I've already mentioned it," she said softly. "Fear gripped me. Your attention was entirely consumed by your professional pursuits, by the growth of your enterprise, and by matters that seemed disconnected from family life. I persuaded myself that sharing this with you would make you feel obligated, yet not truly engaged. I assumed you would just throw money at the situation, yet not genuinely wish to be involved in his life." Andrew Kyo tightened, yet he willed himself to maintain his composure. "You never afforded me an opportunity." She recoiled just a bit, a flicker of remorse evident in her gaze. "I understand." He let out a breath, his fingers brushing through his hair. "Do you really believe I wouldn't have desired him?" Lillian gave a slight shake of her head. "I was unaware, Andrew. I truly had no idea. By the moment I considered sharing it with you, far too much time had slipped away. I felt a sense of apprehension about your words and actions. I hoped Olivier wouldn't be just a secondary consideration in your life. He was worthy of so much more." Andrew gazed at her, and for the first time he truly perceived her, not merely as the woman who had departed, nor just as the individual whose decision had caused him pain, but as a mother who had acted in what she believed to be the right way, despite the fact that it may have been misguided. He cast a quick look at Olivier, who was now cheerfully humming to himself, while he adorned his ice cream with a colorful array of sprinkles. He had overlooked countless milestones, his initial steps, his first utterances, all the precious moments that define a child's journey. "I can't reclaim those years," he said. At last his voice softened. "However, I have no intention of leaving at this moment." Lillian observed him intently, her brown eyes scanning his features as if in search of something tangible to grasp. Gradually she inclined head in agreement. "I understand it was not about forgiveness. It fell short of all his expectations, yet it marked the beginning." Olivier abruptly shifted his gaze toward them, oblivious to the weight of their discussion. "Are we able to indulge in ice once more tomorrow?" Andrew grinned, extending his hand to Tausel. The boy shared playfully. "Are you looking to establish this as a regular practice?" Oliver smiled broadly. "Perhaps." Lillian chuckled gently, her head shaking in amusement. "Not every day, my dear." Olivier sulked for a moment before shifting his gaze to Andrew. "But you'll return, won't you?" Andrew acted without a moment's pause. "Absolutely, my friend. I will remain present." For the first time realized he truly meant it. A week had gone by since that night at the ice cream shop, and a change was in the air. Andrew demonstrated unwavering dedication, appearing daily and investing time with Olivier, affirming that he was genuinely present in their lives. Lillian remained vigilant, yet there were fleeting instances, subtle ones, where he could perceive the facade, beginning to falter instances when her gaze shifted from doubt to a gentler warmth, hinting at a budding sense of trust. This evening found himself on Ella's couch, observing as Olivier meticulously organized his toys into tidy rows across the floor. The young lad was eager to share his collection of action figures with Andrew, passionately detailing which ones represented heroes and which ones were villains. Andrew tuned in, truly engaged, allowing Olivier to elaborate on fantastical skirmishes and covert operations. Lillian glided through the kitchen, her movements soft and deliberate as she prepared the tea for the first time. She had lowered her defenses enough to allow him to remain this long. Typically, she crafted a reason to conclude their gatherings prematurely, maintaining a sense of order, yet this evening she had not hurried him away. That seemed like a step forward. Olivier abruptly pivoted, his head tilting in a gesture of curiosity. "Do you own a home?" Andrew gave a slight nod. "Absolutely. I dose it large." Andrew wore a sly grin, somewhat Olivier's brow knitted in contemplation. "Does it feel isolating?" The inquiry took Andrew by surprise. He couldn't quite pinpoint the reason, yet it happened. He had never thought of his home as desolate before. It exuded elegance, embraced contemporary aesthetics, and showcased impeccable craftsmanship. It served its purpose, well, operating with precision. Yet warmth had always eluded it, at times, he confessed. Olivier nodded as though it all aligned seamlessly in his mind. "Consider acquiring a fish." Andrew arched an eyebrow. "A fish indeed," Olivier marked with a serious tone. "Silently present, they offer a comforting presence." Lillian's Soft laughter drifted in from the kitchen. He has an intense fascination with fish. Olivier faced her, his arms crossed defiantly because they are impressive. Andrew let out a soft laugh. Very well, you've swayed my opinion perhaps. I shall acquire one. Olivier smiled broadly. May I assist in choosing it? Andrew gave a slight nod. Absolutely. The boy wore a satisfied expression, as though he had just made the most significant choice imaginable. He returned to his toy satisfied while Andrew observed him still in disbelief over how much he had overlooked. Lillian approached him, offering a steaming mug of tea. I can hardly wrap my head around the idea of you thinking about bringing a pet into your life. Andrew wore a sly grin. Inevitable. She settled into her seat opposite him, releasing a gentle breath. I did indeed. They do. In that fleeting moment, silence enveloped them both through it of unspoken memories hung in the air, a palpable presence that neither could ignore. Unspoken words lingered between them, and scars remained unhealed, yet there was an essence to this moment that seemed distinct. Lillian placed her mug on the table, her gaze fixed on him with intense scrutiny. It seems like you have a strong desire for this, don't you? Andrew locked eyes with her, his voice steady and unwavering above all else. She observed him intently, looking for any signs of weakness or uncertainty. Yet she found them known. Gradually she inclined her head in agreement. Very well, she replied gently. Andrew was uncertain about the exact meaning, yet he was certain of one thing: it surpassed anything she had offered him in the past, and that sufficed at this moment. Andrew was soon aware of the extent to which his life had transformed until a serene evening unfolded, revealing him seated on Thefla of Lillian's living room, assisting Olivier in constructing a racetrack for his toy cars. Only a few weeks prior, his days were consumed by an unrelenting schedule of meetings, deadlines, and the perpetual pursuit of achievement. Yet here he found himself fully engaged, and in the delightful task of arranging miniature ramps and loops, as Olivier animatedly detailed the rules of his fantastical race. All Rethus one is the quickest, Olivier remarked, lifting a red car. However, this particular one, the blue Ione he chose, excels at jumping. Andrew acknowledged with a solemn nod. That's a compelling approach. Are we in a competition? Olivier smiled broadly. Indeed, however, it's essential to choose a quality vehicle, definitely not a sluggish one. Andrew in deep contemplation before selecting a stylish black car. What do you think of this one? Olivier scrutinized it carefully, then nodded in satisfaction. That's quite clever. However, mine is still destined to triumph. Andrew wore a sly grin. We'll find out soon enough. Lillian lounged on the couch, observing them with an expression that left Andrew puzzled. It had transformed beyond mere hesitation. Not quite that anymore. It was a gentler feeling, one that leaned more towards acceptance. She had been allowing him to enter her world, piece by piece, yet he sensed her lingering caution. He grasped the concept. Trust takes time to develop, and he had lost out on years of their shared experiences. He couldn't simply assume she would let that go as they prepared their vehicles. Olivier abruptly faced Andrew, posing a question that caused him to hesitate. Will you be here tomorrow? Andrew acted without a moment's pause. Absolutely, my friend, I shall. Olivier smiled, pleased with the response, and returned to aligning his car at the starting line. Andrew cast a fleeting look at Lillian. She continued to observe him, and this time when her gazes held her ground. Later that night, once Olivier had drifted off to sleep, Andrew assisted Lillian in tidying up the living room. The silence enveloped the space, a serene and cozy stillness that seemed to belong there. Lillian at last found her voice. He's starting to form a bond with you. Andrew placed the toy car aside, pivoting to meet her gaze completely. I desire for him too. I wish to support him in any way I can. She let out a breath, her fingers gliding through her hair. It continues to frighten me. Hegov, a slight nod. I understand, but I have no intention of leaving. Lillian, she gazed at him for an extended moment before letting out a sigh. I'm beginning to embrace that notion. Andrew sensed errorless deep within his chest. It was not a commitment. It fell short of all his desires, yet it held significance. As he departed that evening was certain of one thing: this transcended mere compensation for time that had slipped away. This was about constructing a future, one he would never abandon again. The conclusion of this narrative transcends mere resolution. It stands as a tribute to personal evolution, atonement, and the strength found in new beginnings. Andrew begins as a man driven by ambition, convinced that his life is fulfilled until he uncovers a reality he never realized was there. The gradual nature of his transformation adds depth and significance to the journey. He doesn't merely hold the title of father. He cultivates it one small moment at a time. Lillian's journey is equally Compelling, she transcends the role, ephemer, obstacle, or love interest. She embodies a mother who acted from a place of fear and the instinct for self-preservation. Her uncertainty stems not from a desire to punish Andrew but from a need to safeguard. Her son, observing her gradually lower her defenses, not merely for Olivier but for herself, enriches the narrative shadowscovers that she no longer needs to bear the weight by herself, that placing her trust in Andrew doesn't equate to relinquishing control but rather to embracing a partnership at the core of everything. Leaves Olivier, the pure spirit who unites them all, the trust he holds, the curiosity that drives him, and his pure belief in love illuminate the narrative beautifully. He doesn't require elaborate displays. What he seeks is simply presence, reliability, and the subtle comfort of knowing that Andrew will remain steadfast the instant he inquires, "Will you return tomorrow?" And Andrew responds, "What a moment's pause carries more weight than any grand proclamation." This conclusion isn't focused on flawlessness. It doesn't tie everything together perfectly, because ity isn't so straightforward. It's a journey of renewal, a process of rebuilding trust, and an understanding that the essence of family is shaped not by history but by the decisions we embrace as we look ahead. And what's truly enchanting about Andrew is not contemplating the future of his career, his financial status, or the mark he will leave behind. Contemplates Olivier concerning presence, and that above all demonstrate the extent of his transformation.